What's up, everyone? Overall, the New York Knicks have had a very quiet offseason. They didn't sign any big-time free agents or make any blockbuster trades. A lot of Knicks fans are panicking, but the fact that the Knicks haven't made a bunch of huge moves is actually a very positive sign. It shows that Leon Rose and the new Knicks front office are trying to build this team the right way rather than going for the flashy quick fix move for once. This offseason, the Knicks avoided giving up assets for Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook. They also avoided overpaying Gordon Hayward. Now, Hayward is a very good player, and the Knicks were interested, but the most they offered was 3 years, $70 million, which is very smart. Hayward may be a good player, but a player with his injury history shouldn't be locked down long-term with big money. The Hornets ended up giving Hayward a whopping 4 years, $120 million contract that they likely will regret years down the line. Knicks fans should be happy that for once, they weren't the dumb team that gave a past his prime veteran a huge contract. The Knicks of the past would have definitely maxed out Hayward and given up draft picks for Russell Westbrook, but luckily, times have changed. Leon Rose and the front office are smart enough to realize that moves like that only create small benefits in the short term while screwing the team in the long term. Instead of that, the moves that the Knicks have made would suggest that they're more interested in building through the draft and developing young players, which is how you set your team up for sustainable success. So in this video, we're going to dissect all of the major moves that the Knicks have made this offseason and give them a grade. But before we continue, if you like content like this, please like the video as it really encourages the YouTube algorithm to recommend it to more people, and please subscribe as it really helps my channel grow. Now let's get started. The first major move that the Knicks made this offseason was drafting Obi Toppin with the 8th overall pick, and the grade here is an A. Obi Toppin could easily end up being the best player in this draft class. He was one of the most dominant players in college basketball, where he was averaging 20 points per game on ridiculous efficiency while leading Dayton to a 29-2 record. Obi Toppin is an extremely athletic player, which makes him a human highlight reel on the court. Offensively, he's a scoring machine. Toppin can finish at the rim extremely well thanks to his size and athleticism. He can score in the post, and he can shoot the ball from outside extremely well too. There are concerns about his defense, but the star potential is clearly there. Many have likened him to Amari Stoudemire. For the Knicks to land him at number 8 could potentially make him the steal of the draft. Before the draft even started, the Knicks were rumored to be willing to give up another draft pick to move up to number 5. For the Knicks to land the potential all-star in Toppin without having to move up is amazing for them. Overall, the Knicks front office nailed it with this pick. The next major move that the Knicks made on draft night was selecting Immanuel Quickley out of Kentucky with the 25th pick. Overall, the grade here is a B. With this move, the Knicks took one of the best shooters in the draft as he shot a blistering 43% from 3 and 92% from the free throw line last season. He also is a really solid defender. Quickley may be 6'3", but with his playing style, I think he's way more of a shooting guard. I believe this was a good pick for the Knicks because they need to surround R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson with shooters to space the floor, and Quickley is an absolute sniper. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll play too much this year because of the depth that the Knicks have at guard, but this was a good selection. Those were the Knicks' 2 draft picks. Now let's get into free agency. The first signing the Knicks made was Alec Burks on a 1-year deal worth $6 million. Alec Burks was a pretty nice signing, which is why this move gets a B. Burks played 66 games last year, with time spent between the Warriors and the 76ers. Between both teams, Alex averaged 15 points, 4 boards, and 3 assists a game on 42% shooting from the field, 38% from 3, and 88% from the free throw line. Alec Burks is a pretty good role player. He's a really good outside shooter, and he could also create offense for himself and others. This isn't a splashy signing, but here the Knicks add a player who's just a nice fit on the roster. Alec Burks will likely end up starting for the Knicks either at the 2 or the 3 spot. If Burks has another good year, the Knicks can possibly trade him at the deadline for a draft pick. He's already 29, so he doesn't have a long-term future on this team. Overall, They landed a good player who fits the team on a cheap contract, so good signing. The next signing that the Knicks made was to bring back Elfrid Payton on a one-year deal worth $5 million. A lot of Knicks fans were upset about this signing because they wanted to upgrade at point guard, but Payton is a lot better than you think. Sure, he can't shoot the ball to save his life, but he's a good defender and he can distribute the ball pretty well. Payton averaged 7.2 assists per game last year for the Knicks, which was the 11th highest assist average in the entire league. I know a lot of Knicks fans wanted to see DSJ and Frank get a lot of burn at the point guard position, but the Knicks couldn't go this year without a competent floor general on the roster. Neither Frank or DSJ have shown up to this point in their careers that they're competent point guards. I also like the fit with Payton and Obi Toppin. For the past couple of years, Payton has developed a nice chemistry with Randle, where they run a lot of pick and roll, a two-man game, and Payton sets him up for easy baskets. Hopefully Payton can run these pick and rolls with Obi Toppin this year and set him up for open shots and lobs, and hopefully Mitch can be the beneficiary of Payton's alley-oops as well. Payton is far from perfect, but he's a decent starting point guard. I know many fans wanted to get Van Vliet, but he was never leaving Toronto, and Jeff Teague joined the contender in Boston. Considering the lack of options for point guard at free agency, I think this was a solid signing, which is why I give it a grade of a B-. The next move that the Knicks made was to sign Nerlens Noel to a one-year $5 million contract. This is a good move that's going to get a B, because here they landed a really good backup center. Noel has spent the last 2 years backing up Steven Adams in OKC, where Noel has revived himself as an excellent defensive center off the bench. Noel protects the rim at a high level, he plays the passing lanes well, which leads to his high steal rate, and he's agile enough to switch onto guards and forwards. Offensively, he does what a modern center needs to do, where he sets strong screens and rolls hard to the basket, where he's an excellent finisher and lob target. This is a great backup to put behind Mitch, and it gives the Knicks 48 minutes of elite rim protection. The last signing that the Knicks made was to bring in Austin Rivers. This signing is another grade that gets a solid B. The Knicks signed Rivers to a 3-year $10 million deal, which amounts to about $3 million a year, which is pretty cheap. The last 2 years of the contract aren't guaranteed, so this is a super team-friendly contract. Rivers is a pretty good spark plug to have off the bench. He can flat out score the basketball, whether it's taking it to the rack or pulling up from downtown. He's capable of having a good scoring night any game. He even had a 41-point game against the Magic last year. He also is a pretty solid defender. Rivers isn't much of a playmaker, which is why I really believe he's more of an undersized 2 than a legit point guard. I think Rivers will end up as this team's 6th or 7th man, and he's another player that may end up getting moved at the trade deadline for a draft pick to a contender. So that's all the free agency pickups, and lastly, I'm going to talk about the 2 Ed Davis trades. So first, the Knicks traded for Ed Davis with the Utah Jazz in a trade that landed up 2 second-round draft picks in 2023. Then, just a few days later, the Knicks traded Ed Davis to the Wolves for Amari Spellman, Jacob Evans, and a future second-round pick. This was a very wise couple of moves here. The Knicks were able to successfully use some of their cap space to acquire 3 second-round draft picks. Those draft picks will be useful for the Knicks rebuild, as they could either be used to draft more young talent or move in a trade to acquire a good player. Overall, this was a very savvy couple of moves that we rarely have ever seen the Knicks of the past do, which is why it's going to receive an A. And guys, that's pretty much all the major moves that the Knicks have made this offseason. Overall, this was a pretty solid offseason for the Knicks. A lot of fans are upset that there weren't any splashy free agency pickups, but they should be fine with that. Last offseason should have taught the Knicks that superstars don't want to come to a garbage New York team. Both Kyrie and KD chose the Nets over the Knicks because the Nets had a good basketball team for them to join. There were barely any superstars available in free agency this year. Fred VanVleet and Gordon Hayward were available, but they were only going to come to the Knicks if they overpaid. That's the reality when you're a bad team. usually don't get quality talent if you don't overpay, and overpaying has severe long-term consequences. Instead, the Knicks were smart this offseason. Instead of giving a veteran a ridiculous contract, they gave some solid role players very cheap, team-friendly deals. And unlike last year, the Knicks didn't overload the roster with veterans that's going to overplay the young core on this team. RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and Mitchell Robinson will all get plenty of burn this season, which will help in the development of their game. The Knicks, after years of incompetence and mismanagement, are finally headed in the right direction because they finally prioritize the development of their young players, which is what a rebuilding team should be doing. Once the Knicks have organically become a good team, they will easily be able to land that marquee talent that becomes available to free agency. And with that said, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Do you like the Knicks off-season moves? Do you like the direction the team is headed? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and enjoy the rest of your day.